Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of my podcast. I hope that you're all doing okay. I want to apologise for the tragic, very, very tragic audio in the last episode. I'm so sorry about that. Like, that was just so bad. Thank you for those of you that pointed it out for me. But yeah, don't know what happens to the audio, but we have sorted it for this episode. I have tried and tested it several times to make sure. So yeah, I'm really sorry, but thank you to those of you that stuck through it and did manage to still listen. I really appreciate that. And also thank you to those of you that left comments on that video and also sent me some DMs and emails. I'm so touched that some of you can relate to that experience that I've had, because I feel like sometimes, I don't know, people don't really want to talk about their perceived flaws publicly. Do you know what I mean? It feels like things that you should just keep to yourself, or you don't want people to know certain things about you and look at you in a certain way. But I always just feel like a lot of my upbringing and, you know, my past and stuff, especially my late teens and early 20s, very much explains, you know, why I am who I am today. So I really just wanted to kind of explore that. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about Black women and boundaries. And over the years, I feel like as I've gotten older, I've just kind of noticed that people get really viscerally, emotionally upset when Black women express having boundaries and having certain standards and wanting to enforce them. Like, it really makes people visibly uncomfortable, and I really want to unpack that because I feel like it's so strange, and I feel that as I get older, it's definitely something that I notice happening a lot more, where it's just kind of just causes this friction, and you can really see people just not liking it. And I think it's great that, you know, more Black women are establishing boundaries in various different ways across all aspects of their life, because we should. And I think the most obvious reason why people are so upset about it is because it's just not really how Black women are naturally socialized to be, especially if you live like me somewhere in the UK or America or other places where, you know, Black women are in the minority. We are not really expected to ever have, you know, boundaries for ourselves or standards that we have for ourselves. We're almost just expected to just, you know, take what we get. And when you look, I suppose, at the totem pole of society, Black women, we rank low. I'm not saying personally that I feel that way, but just objectively, when you look at society, because of racism and being women, we come quite low in that regard. And so I feel like when you're at the bottom of the totem pole, people don't expect you to have boundaries and standards, because it's like, yeah, why would you? Do you know what I mean? Like, stay in your place, stay in your station. And I guess one of the things that kind of creates that friction when Black women exert boundaries is the existing stereotypes about Black women and the labels and categories that people feel like we should fall under. I guess the most prevalent one would be this kind of the strong Black woman. And, you know, Black women can handle everything and anything, and we can power through anything, and you can throw anything at us and we're just going to power through. And I, for obvious reasons, hate that stereotype so much. In some ways it is good, and in some ways I would describe myself as, you know, someone who is a very strong individual, but it's not because I'm a Black woman, it's just because of the life that I've kind of had to live. And I think it becomes harmful when it becomes an expectation. And this is an issue that plagues women in the workplace. You will be overpiled with work because you're seen as just, oh, you can just power through, you're just always going to get through it, it's not that deep for you to do a lot of work. And it's like, no, it is. Like, the same way that you like to take breaks and it's the same way that I need to do it as well. I feel like a particular industry where this is a real problem is the kind of medical healthcare industry. And I'm quite lucky and blessed that I don't really get sick that much to the point that I need to go and see like a doctor or go to the GP or anything like that. So I haven't had this experience very often, but I do know obviously Black women and Black friends that have had to deal a lot with healthcare services. And there was a documentary on, I believe it was the BBC, where they kind of explored this topic, where Black women are just seen to inherently be stronger than women of other races and are therefore treated like that by doctors and nurses and things like that. And sometimes the people overestimate the amount of pain that Black women are able to sustain because of, very racist, very old tropes about Black women being able to handle pain easier. And, I've known many friends that have had things wrong with them, and they obviously know that something is wrong with them, and they go to their doctor and they're basically gaslit into believing that, oh, it's not that deep, it's not that big of a deal, oh, it's fine, da, da, da. When obviously everyone knows their own body best, but a lot of Black women just aren't believed when they go to their doctors to complain about certain things, or they're not given the appropriate referrals that they need to get the help they need because they just are not believed that they're in that much pain. And this idea that just Black women are just inherently strong or stronger than women of other races, it's crazy. And sometimes it can be a case of like an emotional strength as well, where people will use Black women and their Black friends as just a dumping ground for their emotions and their problems, and they feel like Black women can just sit there and take it and listen, and nothing's ever too much. And I've definitely had friendships where I felt this was the case. I don't have many non-white, non-Black girlfriends, but I did have one for a period of time, and I noticed that she liked to do this, just constantly just offload her baggage onto me all the time. And when I knew it was a problem was when I clocked that she doesn't do that to any of her other friends who were mainly white. So it kind of felt like she just saw me as this person who she could, as I said, offload onto. It's like, I don't know where you got that impression. And I actually called her out on it straight up. I was like, I don't like when you do that incessantly. Like, you complain way too much. I'm happy to be your friend and support you and give you advice when you need it and things like that. But every conversation we have is not going to be you just opening the floodgates for all of your issues, and I'm just supposed to sit here and agree with you and nod along with you and make you feel good about yourself. Like, that's not me. I remember she got very upset over that, and that was actually, to be honest, the end of our friendship. I think since then she probably sat with herself and realized that that was just crazy for her to have an issue with me saying that. But after that I just wanted to keep my distance. Like, I don't like that. So I do feel like that is a very common expectation that people have of Black women, is to just be like mentally strong enough as well to just deal with anything. And it's like, I don't know where you got that from, but we need to cut it out. Second is this kind of angry Black woman trope. And I feel like this is one that makes me really upset as someone who is quite like outspoken, and if I think something is wrong, like, I'm gonna say. I feel like I have definitely gotten this label before, and even here on YouTube I've had people, mainly men, kind of say that, make this implication, oh, Black women are always complaining about something, or every time Black women attempt to have conversations about things, oh, you're always just being difficult, you're always just trying to bring it back to race or whatever. And it's like, no, we have reasons to be angry. Like, why do we act as if we don't live in a very racist society in which Black women are treated differently because of the colour of their skin? Whether or not you want to acknowledge that that's a thing, whether or not you want to dig your head in the sand and act like it doesn't exist, it does. And those of us that do have an issue with it, we are not being angry when we speak about it. We're having discussions. This is also something that I feel can really be an issue, like in the workplace as well, where if you are someone who raises concerns, rightfully so, for things that are done wrong to you, you eventually will get the label, whether you know it or not, as being difficult. And people will attempt to deal with you by keeping you off projects because they don't want to potentially deal with your difficultness, keeping information from you because they don't want to deal with you being difficult, and overall just distancing themselves from you. So in way of you speaking up and standing up for yourself, you actually will find yourself isolated. It could even take a toll on the trajectory of your career, which is really, a shame and just very unfair. And then of course we've got the independent Black woman, she can do it all, she doesn't need anyone, she doesn't need any support. And I think this is a really interesting stereotype, because again, like, some of these stereotypes, they're not inherently bad. I mean, obviously angry Black woman is, but in terms of being strong, in terms of being independent, like, those are not objectively negative stereotypes, but it's the way in which they play out. For the independent Black woman stereotype, is this idea that, Black women don't need any help, we don't need any support, we can just keep, powering through. Again, it ties into this strong, but we can just, handle anything by ourselves. And it just perpetuates this idea that Black women, we don't need community, we don't need people within the Black community. It keeps things like, single parent households and this baby mama culture going, because the idea that, you know, women are really independent. It just makes men feel like, oh, well, okay, well, she's going to handle it, she's going to pattern it up, I don't really need to step up or be here or be around, when we all know that's not the case. But yeah, that's a very harmful stereotype that is thrown about, and again, I've definitely been, you know, victim of this, when especially when people see that you're capable of doing something. I think that is the issue as well. Once you're seen to be capable to do something, then you are then piled on with more things, because it's like, well, if she could handle that, she can handle this. And again, in the workplace, this is something that can be very, very prevalent, and a lot of people kind of shared their experiences on my first episode with this very thing, where because Black women are seen as just so independent, we don't get support at work. We're left to manage, you know, big piles of work without people checking in, making sure we've got capacity to handle that kind of workload and the time. No, we're just supposed to be able to just deal with it and, you know, rely on ourselves and manage our own things. And it's like, no, like, we need support, we need mentorship, and we need leaders in businesses that do look at young Black women and think, yeah, we need to support them, not, oh, she's doing well, so we'll just leave her to it. No. So there are a lot of stereotypes about Black women where, as I said, some of them are not inherently bad, but the way in which they play out in society and the daily lives of Black women, they are very harmful. And as I was saying, when it comes to boundaries, the issues come when people see Black women push back on these stereotypes, and they don't like that, and it makes them uncomfortable because it upsets the status quo and what they're used to seeing with Black women. And of course, in my first podcast episode, I spoke a lot about I spoke about my journey in the workplace, and this is definitely somewhere where I've seen, as I was saying at the start, this very emotional reaction to when Black women express having boundaries and standards. And one story I didn't share, it wasn't at that company, it was at a different one, was I work in the kind of entertainment, music, fashion, TV, film, that kind of industry. And a big part of that industry is like partying and drinking. Like, it's kind of intertwined into the work culture of those industries. And I recall one day, it was on a Thursday, and we were having after work drinks in the office because we had a lot of bottles left over, and we were having drinks. So we were sat there all having a good time. Bear in mind, you know, I enjoy having drinks with my colleagues and going out for activities and stuff, because I feel like it's a good opportunity for people to get to know me outside of work. Like, I take my work quite seriously, and I like to concentrate when I'm at work and just usually have my earphones in and just get on with it. So I like to go to these things so that, you know, I can get to know people and chat. And I love a good party, I love a good drink. That's all a bit of me. So yeah, I love it. So this particular Thursday, we were sat in the office, we were having drinks, and everything was going fine. You know, drinks were flowing, the chat was flowing, it was all well and good, until a certain topic kind of came up. And there was a senior member of staff, she was female, she was white, and she had a particular opinion on this topic that we were talking about. And I had a separate opinion. Bear in mind, the topic that we were talking about was not particularly egregious to be talking about at work. Do you know what I mean? This is not like a controversial topic at all. It was just two different opinions being shared. I didn't even realize that whatever was going on. So as we are having, you know, this conversation and I'm kind of sharing my opinion, I can start to see that she is just getting annoyed. Like, she does not like what's coming out of my mouth. And I use that as my opportunity. That's my cue. Let me get my bag, let me go wash my cup, and let me go home. So I get up now, I go to the kitchen, and I start to wash my glass. Tell me why, out of the corner of my eye, I can see this woman coming into the kitchen. I'm thinking, oh, okay, like, what does she want? She corners me and she says to me, so she talks about this topic. She was like, okay, I know you said this about X, but if we're going to talk about that, then how about we talk about, and then she starts listing things that she feels I do, you know, in the office that are not right for me to do. And I just was obviously very like, what's going on? Do you know what I mean? Like, huh? Because why are you cornering me in the kitchen? What are you doing? So I just kind of turned around to her, and bear in mind, as she said this, it was very kind of, I don't know if you've ever had a senior member of staff attempt to like lord their power and influence over you. Like, she was trying to intimidate me in that moment. I just kind of turned around to her and I just kind of looked her dead in the eye, and I said to her, as my senior, you are well within your rights to tell me that I am doing X, Y, and Z wrong. But you're within your rights to tell me that between 9 and 6 o'clock when I work, not at 7:30 when we're sitting in the office and everyone is several drinks down. That's not what we're going to do. And I told her, if you want to have an actual conversation about this and these are genuine things that you'd like to bring up with me, obviously you can. We can do that tomorrow or whenever you're free and you want to do that. But yeah, we're not going to have this conversation now. Her mouth was just hanging open. I then finished washing my glass and just left the kitchen, went to pack up my stuff and go. She's following me. I didn't mean it like that. Oh, no, I'm so sorry. Oh, no, stay. Don't go. You don't have to go. No, don't start backtracking now, because when you came in the kitchen, you were moving big and bad. You thought, what, I was going to cry or I was going to stand there, but oh my God, I'm so sorry I said what I said. No, no. And second of all, I'm going home. Like, this job is not my life. If you're going to move like that when we're having like little drinks and just having little chats, then I'm just going to go home. Do you know what I mean? And I did, and it was just a big thing. Everyone was just sat there like, oh my gosh, but I didn't think it was that deep, because for me, it's like, I'm just going home. Like, it's not that deep. I'm not going to sleep in the office drinking all night, am I? And then the next day, she called me up on the phone and she apologized profusely for the way in which she had acted towards me and the things that she'd said and whatever. And again, for me, like, I'm not going to hold like a grudge or whatever, just don't do it again, because I don't know what you thought was going to happen when you tried that little move. And yeah, I told her that and she was just fine. And I said, yeah, it's cool. After that, this woman made it a point to just not really talk to me. She wouldn't greet me when she came into the office. I was no longer kind of invited to work on projects that she was working on. And yeah, she kind of just very much distanced herself from me. And obviously this was all because after the initial kind of remorse that she felt apologizing, she probably got to a point where she felt like, ugh, why did I even apologize in the first place? Do you know what I mean? And her behavior after that fact very much gave that, that she just saw me as just, well, I'm just not going to deal with you anymore. How dare you kind of talk to me like that? Or how dare you pull me up in that way or establish kind of boundaries for yourself, basically. Yeah, up until the day I left, I really did not speak to that woman again. And prior to that, we were, I wouldn't say close, but she was someone that I looked up to in the business as a woman. So yeah, that was a real shame. But again, it goes to show just how crazy she got when I said that, no, like, you don't actually get to talk to me like that, you know what I mean? And here are my boundaries, and you can talk to me about this during workout. Like, she just did not like that. And I feel like in the workplace, a lot of Black women feel like they can't ever do that, or they can't ever say things like that to people, whether that's someone on their level, someone senior. They feel like they don't have that power, or they don't want to jeopardize their position in a company by doing that. And actually, I think that the opposite is true. I think it's very important in the workplace as a Black woman to establish boundaries with your co-workers, with your seniors, so that you don't get trampled on and you don't get treated badly. And after that, to be honest, all it takes is one incident like that for everyone to know what time you're on. It's going to get passed around. Everyone's going to know that if they talk to you crazy, they're going to hear about it. And it sets a standard. Does it mean that you kind of distance yourself from people? Yeah, it does. But at the same time, you don't really want to be around the type of people that ever thought it was okay to talk to you in that way in the first place. So in my opinion, it's not really too much of a loss in that way. And the second time that I recall something in the workplace very similar happening when I attempted to establish my boundaries was, I spoke about it briefly in my first episode. And it was when the kind of last week of my work, where my manager just consecutively for a few days was clearly just, I don't know, the hatred for me was just bubbling from her. And she eventually demanded that I come to a meeting with her at 9:30 in the morning as soon as I get in. This was following the back of a Zoom call where she had decided to just hang up, have a go at me, shout at me on this call in front of my colleague, and then just hang up and leave. So she then felt like, she had to kind of have this meeting with me in the morning. And from the tone of the messages as she was telling me to come to this meeting, like, I could tell she wanted to take me to this meeting so she could, establish her power over me. And how dare you? I could just tell, like, I could completely tell. And the ironic thing is, because underneath that episode, a few people commented being like, oh, it was very disrespectful of you not to go to that meeting that your manager was telling you to go to at the workplace. There is a hierarchy of the way that things work, and you do not have the power to say that you're not going to meetings. Yes, I do. And I'm really sorry that you have been in workplaces before where you felt that you couldn't do that, but you absolutely can. And I'll clarify, there's a difference between being, an intern, an apprentice or whatever at a job, and your manager tells you, okay, come to this meeting. You're not going to sit there and say, no, you're an apprentice, you're an intern, you're going to go to that meeting. Do you know what I mean? What else could you possibly be doing? That's fine. But this is not my first rodeo. Like, I am nearing 6 years of my career, and that's only my professional career. In terms of social media in general, I've been doing it for a very, very long time. So yes, I do have the right to establish boundaries around my time and how I timekeep, how I lay out my work for the day to ensure that I get things done. And I think the most ironic thing with that situation is that months prior, we had mutually agreed on the fact that we don't have meetings before 10 o'clock, because I had expressed to her, I don't like coming in the morning and just being like having to have this meeting, because essentially the point of the meeting is to talk about the work we're doing that day. I don't know what work I'm doing that day until I come into work. And I also had tasks that had to be done in the morning, emails from, the evening before that I had to reply to, work that was still lingering from the day before that I wanted to wrap up in the morning. So during one of our one-to-ones, I said to her, I would like to, can we have this morning meeting at 10 o'clock? I feel like by then I'll have a better idea of what my day's looking like and, have more ideas to bring to the table. And at the time she was like, yeah, that's fantastic. Wow. Well done for coming up with that. She was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. She's like, and good for you for kind of telling me like how you work best, because that's how we're going to build, a really good team. Because this was a new team, bear in mind. So she was on board, but she was on board until those same boundaries caused her to not be able to have the access to me that she believed she deserved to have because of whatever perceived slight against her she felt like I had done. And when it came to that point, all of a sudden me having these boundaries, it was no, I need to talk to you now. Okay, is it something serious? No. Okay, great. And when I said no, again, I didn't really go into detail in that video because it was a minor part of, the wider points that I was trying to make. But when I said no, I didn't say, no, I'm not going to talk to you whatsoever. Like, please be so for real. What I actually said was, oh, I can't talk at 9:30. So we can either do 10 o'clock, or we can do any time after 10 o'clock. Or, as you're saying, if it's not that important, we can just do it any time during the week, because I'm actually quite busy today. She didn't like that. She didn't like the fact that I had boundaries and options that fit in with the way that I work, which we had previously agreed on. But now that she wants to chastise me and tell me off, she wants to just bulldoze her way through those boundaries. And she, in her head, is probably thinking, I can't believe that this girl is telling me that she's not coming. Why not? Why can't you believe that? Because if I was a white staff member and I had expressed the exact same thing, I really don't think she would have had that reaction. I really don't think she would have. But I feel like because, of me, she just kind of felt like, oh, how dare she? And it sent her crazy. Like, it really sent her crazy, because we did end up having the normal meeting at 10 o'clock and she looked ready to combust. She was furious. And it's crazy that all of that was caused in that morning because I had said, let's just have the meeting half an hour later. And I think sometimes in the workplace, there are a portion of white people who really get off on having power over black people and putting black people in their place and just lauding their power over black people, because they know it's an environment in which that kind of behavior can run, and an environment where that behavior isn't really easy to call out, because it's also not abnormal for your manager to ask to have meetings with you. And that's how they get away with doing things. So as well as that, I really don't like when people attempt to explain away very obvious issues of underlying racism. I really don't. And there have been several comments under that video where people were like, well, you don't know this, or she might have meant this, or that might have meant that. And it's like, that's another thing. Why do we do that to black women and their boundaries? Why do we always attempt to rationalize what happens to them instead of just accepting what they are saying? Do you know what I mean? So yeah, those are two examples in my workplaces anyway, where, me having boundaries and trying to establish boundaries and standards for which I like to operate at work has caused issues. And I don't really think that those boundaries are anything that's so crazy for me to ask. You know what I mean? It's not as if I'm saying, oh, I can only start work at 12 o'clock because I've got to make sure that, my hair is dry or that my afro is ready to go. Like, I'm not saying things like that. I'm literally just saying, I've got work to do. Can we push this meeting back? But even me just saying that is seen as an issue. And I feel like over the years as well, there's been so many examples in the public eye where we've seen this kind of visceral, really emotional reaction that people have when black women attempt to establish any sort of boundaries. You can look at someone like Meghan Markle. I wouldn't say that I'm her biggest fan, but regardless, the way in which she is treated, because she essentially wanted to be able to exist in the royal family in a particular way and, do her public engagements in a particular way, is crazy. You know what I mean? She still to this day has thousands of people that absolutely detest her, troll her, bully her because she dared to have standards in this establishment, even though there have been times where other royal family members have had, adaptations and things made for them. So it's not something that can't be done. It's something that, was seen it shouldn't be done, because how dare this, black girl, this part black girl, sit there and make demands on the royal family about what she wants. And that's what I mean. I feel like a lot of people perceive black women establishing boundaries to be demands. It's like, it's not demands. They are just saying, what they would prefer, what they would like, what works for them. The same way that every other group of people is allowed to do that, and everyone's just like, yeah, whatever. And another example, a more kind of recent one, is so Chapel Rowan is this up and coming pop star. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of her, and she recently has been going viral for essentially setting her boundaries. The first one was around the way in which her fans interact with her, and she asked them to stop touching her and following her and being too up close and personal with her, using her government name and things like that she doesn't like that. And she was applauded for that across the internet, across wherever. People were like, yeah, that's great, that's what more artists should be like. Good on her for saying, her boundaries and what she likes and doesn't like. That's great for her. And this week she was at the VMAs, and there was a kind of altercation on the red carpet where I guess one of the cameramen said something to her, and she span around and said, shut the fuck up, something like that. And she said it again, like, don't you dare shut the fuck up. And I don't know, I've seen different discourses where apparently he wasn't actually talking to her and she span around and said that, or the person was talking to her and she turned around and said that. And I've worked on a lot of red carpets before in that kind of space where all the photographers are, and it is a very, very, very hectic space. I feel like when it comes to the red carpet, I don't know how personally you should take things like that, because everybody is shouting. The photographers will shout at themselves, they'll shout at you. There's been times I've had to clap back at photographers, so could have been a genuine mistake. But regardless, she has been applauded again for that. And it just made me think, can you imagine the outrage if a black pop star was to pop off at a cameraman like that and tell them to their face, don't you fucking do that? Can you imagine the uproar? And what it really made me think about was Kelly Rowland, when she was at Cannes and she was on the red carpet and she was being visibly harassed and touched by this security woman. And what I found so interesting about that is, like, anyone with two eyes can see that she was clearly being like manhandled. I don't know what person would enjoy being, you're walking there in your nice dress, you're dressed up, you're trying to take pictures, and someone is telling you to like move along. And the world's immediate reaction to that situation wasn't, oh my gosh, why is she doing that to Kelly Rowland? Good on her for telling her to stop. It was, who does Kelly Rowland think she is? Oh, she's a singer, not an actress. What's she even doing there? Oh, she's D-list. She hasn't been relevant since Destiny's Child. Oh, Kelly thinks that she's Beyonce. That's why she's acting like that. Oh, did you see the way she put her finger up in her face? That is so disrespectful. So many just opinions of Kelly Rowland because she dared to tell someone, get away from me. Like, literally, stop touching me. God forbid a black woman tell someone to not touch her and to not aggressively shoo her along. And I really felt for Kelly Rowland in that moment, because she did like an interview shortly after where she was on the verge of tears. And I can't imagine telling someone rightfully not to do something to you and having the entire world call you a whole bunch of names, call you entitled, call you a diva, all of this stuff, all because you dared to establish your boundaries. Look, don't touch me, I'll keep walking, but just you don't need to do that. And, one thing I also find interesting about that situation, and that I find interesting about a lot of situations similar to that, is this incessant need whenever a black woman talks about an unpleasant experience that she's had, or, a time where she's needed to assert her boundaries. People always need to know the bigger picture. What is the wider picture? Oh, let's see the footage from, before she said that, to really establish who was in the wrong here. And it's very weird because the same is not asked of other people when they say, oh, this happened to me or that happened to me. No one needs the wider context. No one asks for a bigger picture. There is no, oh, but it could have been. There isn't that. There's just an acceptance that whatever was done has clearly upset this person. We're going to listen, we're going to empathize, and we're going to support that person. But that doesn't really happen for black women. And it's like I was saying earlier, how under that episode that I posted clips of it on TikTok, and I had people saying that to me. Oh, well, maybe the manager didn't mean it like that. Maybe that wasn't like that. Well, how do you know that it wasn't this? Don't you think it's presumptuous to assume? No, I don't. Like, stop questioning black women in that way, because it also perpetuates this idea as if like black women are too dumb, like we're too dumb to accurately analyze the situation that's going on in front of us, so we just jump to conclusions all the time. I know the difference between someone doing something that they don't realize that they're doing something but they don't intend it to be harmful, and the opposite of that. I know that, and I don't need, and neither does any black woman need to be told, oh, well, it could have been this. No, like, don't insult our intelligence. And yeah, it goes back to the point that I was saying at the start, that I think it really, really makes people mad when black women challenge this kind of status quo of us always being just expected to just take whatever is given to us, take whatever scraps is given, like we're just expected to take that. And when we don't, instead of being supported and being respected in those decisions that we make, we are just ridiculed and mocked and questioned and queried in a way that other groups of people aren't. And I remember watching Monique on Club Shay Shay's podcast, and she was talking about this, and she was speaking about Taraji, and obviously Taraji a few months ago or last year, I can't remember when it was, came out and said, exposed the kind of treatment that she was having behind the scenes, and the fact that she was paid a lot less than her white co-workers on productions that she was on. And Monique was saying that when she said similar things 10 years ago, the reaction was very different. She didn't have people rallying around her, supporting her or speaking up on her behalf. She was actually told basically that she should just be grateful that she's even included in in that scene, especially, she said, as a fat black woman, she should just be grateful that she's even given the space that she's given, and she definitely should not be complaining about her pay or her treatment that she receives. And I've always kind of got that vibe of this, idea that black women should just be happy to be wherever we are, happy to be included, grateful to be included. And unfortunately, I feel like this sentiment is something that's also held by a lot of other black people, where I could tell that there were some comments under my content from the last episode where people felt that, I had someone, a real creep, go to my LinkedIn, see where I worked, come back to the YouTube page, and then start saying, oh, well, I can see that you've worked in some interesting high profile places, and to be honest, you should have been more careful to keep those jobs and not be so da 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 da. And obviously I blocked this person because what the hell? But again, it's this idea of you should just be happy to be here. I don't care where I've worked. I could have worked the most prestigious job in the world. It doesn't mean that I have to tolerate subpar behavior just because I'm in that space. I don't need to be grateful to be here as if I was plopped here, by luck. And anyone who listened to my last episode will know, like, I've not really had an easy life, and I've definitely not had an easy career journey. I had to drop out of university. So no, I'm not happy to be here. I've worked very hard to be here. I've taken a lot of temporary L's and sacrificed a lot to get to where I am. So I'm not going to walk into rooms as if I need to shuffle in and be happy to be here. And I think in a lot of industries where black people are a minority, or if you find yourself being the only black person in the company or team or anything like that, there is kind of this air from certain people where it's almost like, oh, look, you're the only black person here. Like, that means that you're special. Like, you made it. Because look, we don't really hire black people. So if you're sitting here, that means you're really good. And it's like, I'm sorry to say, I don't see myself in that way. Like, I have just as much right to be here as anyone else. That's that kind of attitude, or that kind of expectation that black women should just be grateful for whatever scraps we're given, whatever little moments of inclusion that we have, and we shouldn't strive for more. We should never speak up about any negative things that we face, is just weird. It's very strange, and I just really don't support or ascribe to that type of mentality at all. And I think it's very brave of any black woman, Monique, Taraji, Kelly Rowland, Meghan Markle, any of these people, to speak up and out about the disrespect that they face in their respective environments, because it does need to be spoken about. And I think a lot of black people feel quite scared to talk about things like that, because they think that it's going to mean that they lose their jobs, or it's going to affect their reputation and things like that. And I just think, I don't know, well, it takes some people being brave like that to actually start these conversations and make sure that black women's voices are being heard, because otherwise it just kind of, keeps on going. And I think in a lot of spaces, there are probably a lot of Black people that are just happy to do what they know they need to do in order to keep peace. But unfortunately, I'm just not really one of those people. Do you know what I mean? I've got quite a big mouth. And if I don't like something or I feel like I'm being disrespected, then fortunately, people are going to hear about it, because I don't believe that I am less than anyone else because of the colour of my skin. So I'm not going to act like I'm less than anybody else to make other people feel comfortable. It's just not what I'm going to do. And it's not just the workplace in which Black women's standards and boundaries are challenged. It can also be like interpersonal relationships as well. Yeah, some African households, the concept of, young Black women in the house having boundaries is, non-existent. And it doesn't have to be that, oh, you come from an abusive household and that happens to you. Even just in general, I think it's just an inherent part of a lot of Black cultures where children are not really seen as their own individual people. They are seen as property of the parents. And if they want to go into your room when you're not around, they can do that. If they want to take your phone and go through it, they can do that. And I've always been against that. I feel like children should be able to exercise boundaries, and that's how you grow and raise children, so that by the time they're adults, they know that they have the right to have boundaries. But when you are in the home and everything you own, everything you do is just a free-for-all for people to trample on, you're going to take that mentality into the real world, and it's going to affect the ways in which you operate in the world, because you don't inherently believe that you do have boundaries, or you have the right to say, actually, I don't like this, or please don't do this, or I like this done like this. You feel like you can't do that, or that you're being too much when you do that, when you're not at all, because it's a very standard thing that other people freely do. Whereas, Black people and Black women have to feel like, oh, we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to have like boundaries and stuff. You are, like, you really genuinely are. And I think in romantic relationships as well, like, Black women having boundaries is something that can cause issues, even just online. Like, any video you see of a Black woman sitting down to talk about the certain standards that she has for the men that she dates or marries or whatever, there is always pushback from people. Like, they always go viral, those videos, and you'll go to the comment sections and it's just person after person saying, oh, but what about this? Oh, but you don't know if that person is this. You don't know that. Like, it's always this idea that Black women should just we should just take whatever. We're not allowed to have certain standards. We're not allowed to have, requests for ourselves that we have when it comes to like love and relationships. We just need to take what we can get. And part of that ties into the idea that there are a lot of people that believe that, Black women are undesirable, therefore we shouldn't have choices and standards because you're lucky that someone even looks your way, which I think is just absolute bollocks. And I always advocate for Black women to have standards for themselves, and to have standards that match, where you are. You don't need to settle just because X, Y, and Z says that Black women aren't attractive or whatever. No, like, you should wait out for someone who respects you and rates you and does meet your standards. And recently, there was a TikTok creator called Clark. I'm sure a lot of you follow her. I think she's so cute and so sweet. And she basically made a video. Like, the video was she wasn't even saying anything bad. She's an Ivy League, Columbia educated girl, and she was basically saying that she wants someone who is educated to the same standard that she is and earns, a good amount of money, because she earns a lot from what she does. And the pushback of people, sorry to say, mainly Black men online, telling her that she thought she's too big for her boots. She thinks she's better than X, Y, and Z. How dare she say that? Listing out all the different scenarios in which she should accept someone who doesn't meet those standards because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, the girl said what she wants. If that's not you, that's fine. Do you know what I mean? But you don't need to try and drag her down and make her feel as if she's asking for too much, or she's doing too much, or her expectations are too high when they're not. And I fear that a lot of people just enjoy seeing Black women in kind of struggle relationships, struggle love, where they're having to break their back or be single mums or be baby mums or whatever. Like, they just enjoy seeing Black women in those positions because it legitimizes what they already think, the lowly opinions they have of Black women. So when Black women want different for themselves or more for themselves, or they still want respect, even if they are baby mums or single mums, people are like, well, you don't deserve that. And that kind of attitude is just really problematic. So yeah, ultimately, I guess the reason why Black women establishing boundaries and standards for themselves upsets people so much and makes them so emotional is because they just aren't really used to Black women doing that at all. And I think that Black women have been so silent for so long, kind of done what they've needed to do to get ahead, that they don't really like to see Black women take autonomy over their lives in that way of actually having standards and boundaries, because unfortunately they just inherently don't believe that Black women deserve to have that, and it goes back to what I was saying about where Black women are seen in terms of society, and we are seen as down there, and people down there should not dare say that they want this or deserve that or should have that. We should just take what we're given. And yeah, it's just crazy to me, I guess, as I get older and I have like more of these experiences and I get more confident in myself, and I just see people have very kind of weird reactions towards me because I don't conform to their idea of what they feel like a Black woman should be or how they should act. And it makes them angry, it makes them uncomfortable. But I feel like we should keep making people uncomfortable and angry. But yeah, I would love to hear about you guys and your experiences with kind of asserting boundaries with people and how people have reacted. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this episode. I hope you have great weeks, and I will see you back here next Sunday. Thanks, guys.